Get ready to be amazed. Get ready to know things that are usually unknowable. Get ready for an hour of insight and fascinating entertainment with Dr. Linda Salvin. For nearly 3 decades, Dr. Linda has been one of America's most celebrated psychic readers, metaphysical clinicians, and unmatched talk show hosts, bringing insights and solutions to thousands of people worldwide. Pull up a chair, turn it up, and get ready for a visit with the one and only Dr. Linda. And now, live from Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Linda Salvin.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another Dr. Linda right here on your platform, wherever you're listening, whatever time of day, if you're downloading, whatever, I welcome you. I'm a psychic healer and a medium. I've been doing this show about 30 years on different platforms and what was known as real radio at the time. And I do this to help enlighten you, educate you, introduce you to new people out there that can answer questions for you. I will do readings. I won't do channeling on a show like this at this moment, but I'm here to help you. So if you don't get me while I'm on the show, you can always reach me off the show at drlinda@lindasalvin.com or lindasalvin.com. Or finally, we have drlindaradio.com, where you just go right to the radio station embedded in my website. You can listen to this show over and over again. You can download other shows that have been around for 20 years or 20 weeks or 20 days. It's all there on the new drlindaradio.com. So today I'm going to bring a guest on who's also in the spiritual world like myself, but he's written a book. Mine's coming out this year. I keep saying that, but it is. I've been working on it along with other projects. But what I love about this man is he's put it all together in a very simple, fun way to introduce you to the wacky world of the woo-woo, as we call it. And you've heard me use the word woo-woo. He uses the word woo-woo. And what else are we going to call it? It is the woo-woo, because you can't see it, touch it, but you know it, you feel it, you question it. So without any more woo-woo, let me bring on the woo-wooer, Scott Gabriel. He's in Florida. And welcome to the show, Scott. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. You know, I met Scott somewhere along the Facebook train a long time ago, and we connected spiritually because we're in a very similar there we go. Let's use that. In a similar line of work and helping people spiritually. How did you get started, Scott, with God, spirituality, and wanting to help? How did it happen for you?
Well, for me, it was at a really early age. I mean, by the time I was, 4, 5, 6 years old, grown-ups would show up at the house and they'd say, I'm here to see Scott. And my mom would say, oh, what'd that boy do? And they'd say, no, I want to heal my wife. Oh, okay, well, come on in. We can do this and that.
As a child?
Yeah, so they'd bring me in and I'd do whatever. Or, I could see people that, I call them the see-through people, but I could see people that other people said they couldn't. And, when you're a little kid, and you're like, hey, Grandpa's here. I see Grandpa right over here and he's doing X, Y, Z. And,
Nobody saw him. He was already deceased, but you saw him?
What's that?
Was he already deceased and you saw him?
Yeah. Wow. And people were like,
whoa,
doing this. And then they're, kind of pat you on the head and kind of, oh, that's cute, honey. And then next thing you know, Grandpa's saying, hey, tell my kid this and that and this, and tell the grandkid this and that. And they're like, how you couldn't know that? Like, nobody knows that. I'm like, well, Grandpa does. He's right here. Like, are you not listening? And
did you not know you were different or strange or odd or gifted or whatever term they used back then?
Well, I got really blessed from the standpoint that my family kept saying I was just a kid with an overactive imagination.
That's always the imagination, right? Yeah.
So you didn't have to worry about, good, bad, right, wrong, religious conflict, anything else, because your imagination, you've got free reign to do what you need to do.
Well, we know that it's not just your imagination. We know you have a gift, and now you're in an adulthood and you've got a family of your own. Do you read your family? Do you pick stuff up around the family so you know when your kid's lying or getting in trouble? Are you able to go beyond the veil and help your family, or do you kind of turn it off? Because I have to turn it off around my family. Although with my assistant, who I think is listening, or with certain people in my family, sometimes you can't just shut it off. It's right there. It comes out as the message or the attack or the correction or the idea. Sometimes you can't just flip it off, right?
Right. Well, most of the time, with my family, we've got kind of a rule that I don't look unless I'm asked, because I want them to be free to live their best life and not have to
Good.
worry about what dad can see. But by the same token, if they've got an issue, be it physical,
Well,
spiritual,
yeah, that's your
emotional,
dad. That's what you're for, to help solve problems and guide them and give them direction and help cure whatever's going on. That's you being a dad. But you just happen to have an extra gift being a dad, which
right?
means that you can see beyond. Hi, Rob. It's nice to see you. My friend from grad school I've known for 40 something years is here. So anybody can join the chat. That'd be nice. And then once we get on the new system, which will be in June, I'm going to be on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I'll have you back on at that time as well, and we'll rerun this as well. But let's move into your book, because I am grateful that I was one of the few people that you sent the PDF file to for an evaluation, and then I left my little blurb, which has been printed, and I'm going to read it. And the name of the book, tell people the name of the book, please, because I've got the table of contents and everything.
It's Spiritual Gifts, A Glimpse Behind the Veil.
And I wrote, anyone on the path or just awakening to the spiritual world must read. You will become enlightened and your soul will be touched. You will be in awe as I am. And that was something I wrote that's in part of the book. There are 16 chapters in Scott's book, everybody. And he talks about the veil, walk-ins. I'm a walk-in. I walked in 1981 during a plane crash. I want to go over that. We have past lives, which I talk about all the time. OBEs, which is out-of-body experiences, astral travel, astral sex. And I have a lot of clients that are always in the astral plane with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Before it becomes the physical relationship, it's often astral, or it has been physical, then it goes to astral. We'll get into that because that's fun to talk about, as is psychic healing, mediumship, the paranormal, the dark side. My assistant asked earlier, why are spirits always cold? So we'll get to that. And with animal communication, I love that. Aliens, I'm not big on that. I get scared, but you can talk about that. Akashic records, I'm fascinated with. Christ, NDEs, after death, afterlife, and letting go. So we have more than enough for 1 hour, which means I'm going to have to bring you back. We might get through 3 topics today. What's your favorite? Is there any one area that you just have an amazing passion for in all of this?
Well, in my world, it's all intertwined and intermixed.
Yes, it is.
It's not like saying, when clients come and they're like, well, I'd like like you're ordering off of a drive-through menu. It's like a little medium, maybe a past life, maybe some healing, And to me, it's like, dude, I just tune in and how can I help? What's most important to you? Life's a big place. Help me narrow it down. What area of life you want me to work with? Or if there's someone on the other side that you need to connect with, whatever it is, whatever's most important to you. My goal is to be the most help that I can.
To give them the closure, comfort, the healing, the direction, the path, whatever they need for that moment. You work a little differently than I do. I have to either do the readings or book an appointment for the healing or book the appointment for the mediumship. I can do it all at once, but the way my gift comes in, I have to focus and know that I'm channeling the right person, or I want to spend that 40 minutes healing that person properly rather than hit and miss. But the way that your technique works, you're all encompassing in a different way. And that's what's beautiful about practitioners. We all have a different method, but we get to the same place.
Right. Well, and the way that my thing works is, we're all a little different. But to me, we're multifaceted, multi-layered beings.
Right.
And so for a healing, there's the physical component, but there's also the energetic, the spiritual, the relationship, the past life, whatever it is.
It's a lot. So
mixed them together with creating it, then, sometimes it needs to be all mixed in with moving on the other side of it. Where it needs to go is kind of where it goes.
How do you define a walk-in? Because I know how it was introduced to me. I want to hear you. Then I'm going to bring back my story and we're going to put it together as a walk-in.
Sure. Well, my experience has been, I walked into this body at age roughly 5. And basically there has to be a soul inside of a body that no longer wants to be in that body.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be another soul that says, hey, I can make use of that. I can use that. And I'm willing to walk through whatever you're walking through right now to get you on the
shift
other
it.
side of it. I gotta, there's that transition, transitions on both sides of the veil.
Do you remember it, Scott? Do you remember the experience? Do you remember the actual walk in, walk out? Do
Oh
you?
yeah,
I do
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I'm flying around the cosmos, having a good time, just in between lives, ripping it up, having a hoot. And I see this little flare go up, and I'm like, what's that about? So I fly down to look at it, and here's this little kid, 4 or 5 years old, and just wrecked. His life contract, he made a tough one. Had walked through a lot of stuff, from a non-functioning body that was told it would never walk, and the Shriners Children's Hospital busting it up, half body cast, above the knee, below the knee, da. Went through all that, made it to where they were mobile. A lot of divorce, and then abuse, to the point that people went to jail and people were moved from states, like to a very high level of every type of abuse: physical, sexual, emotional.
All by the age of 5? We lost you.
So
there we are.
So anyway, yeah, he was just, he was rough, and he was done. We read our life contract, what we're looking to do, and sometimes we get a little overzealous, like a freshman picking out college courses. I can do this and that and this and that.
Then they're overwhelmed with the coursework. Yeah. Little guy was bouncing around at age 5, and you decided to walk in, and this is the journey you have in helping people find God, spiritual growth, integration, getting out of certain problems, fixing what might be, like, I call it like a spoke getting out of alignment in the wheel, because life is a wheel. We got lots of little spokes, and there's always something to fix. And you learn how to put it together mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And the hardest part's the spiritual aspects. And I went to school in Michigan for a master's in public health epidemiology. 4 years later, I was in a commercial airline plane crash on company business doing environmental health and safety. And as I slid down the ramp, I had the walk-in experience. This loud voice went, "Don't do this, do," and I was given a message. But it was literally a whooshing sound where I could feel and hear like a wind tunnel going right through me. But when I hit the ground on my knees at the end of the chute, I just ran and ran and ran. And when I stopped running, I saw this is at John Wayne Airport in 1981 in Southern California. And it was a Boeing 737 that crash landed. I had a premonition an hour and a half before it crashed that the plane was going to crack in half. And my partner thought I was just tired. I saw something, but I had my first vision. And I saw, I don't know if you know LA at all, but I saw the 405 freeway, and then I panned, and I saw the paramedics, and I panned, and I saw the terminal, I panned again, and there was this Boeing 737 on its belly, on fire, cracked in half. And I just thought, oh my God, I just survived a plane crash. I was 50 feet out of my body on the left and 5 feet 8 on the right, Scott. And that sensation or walk-in or whatever it was lasted 4 months. And the way I found out the term walk-in was a friend of mine told me to go to this psychic. And I'd only been to a psychic once before, and I thought my friend told her everything about me because I didn't know how it worked. But her back was to me. Her name was Shirley. I don't even know if she's alive today. I don't know where she is. She goes, "You're a walk-in." And I said, "What's a walk-in?" She goes, "It's when you're close to death and another soul takes over for a different purpose." She goes, "Whoever walked in is really psychic." And I started laughing. I said, "I'm not a psychic." Well, I am, as you know. But back then in 1981, it was very confusing. It took 6 years to go from the walk-in experience to calm it down and feel like I was on the planet and I could repurpose my life or feel comfortable. So if you were 5 going through that, did it take a few years before you adjusted? Because it took me a long time to feel, I don't know what I was feeling, but I certainly didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And this is pre-internet, so there was no way to Google what had happened. But how did you cope with it? Do you remember, or did you just wake up saying, "Oh, now I'm new"?
Oh no, there was
It's a process. It's a process.
between me
Talk about
and the original owner,
Yeah.
and especially where the body had been torn apart and put back together and everything by the Shriners, it didn't operate like normal stuff. And so I'm like, okay, here's the deal. I'll take over, but we're going to start off. I'm going to ride shotgun and see how you do this. Start doing it. You're going to hang out and make sure that, if I get lost, you can help me out, because there's a million dials and buttons. And then when I'm comfortable, you take off, I'll take over. We're good.
Okay. So your mom found this little boy turned into a man, and she had to learn to deal with her new son. That was a woman.
Well, and again, because of all the trauma that was going on in my life at that time, um, she just attributed it to the abuse and all those things, coping mechanisms, those kind of things. But she said, you were a little kid, and then around 5, it was just like boom, and you were an old man in a 5-year-old body.
That's
with the
funny.
things that you would say and the things that you knew and those things. And I just went, well, glad you put up with me.
And now you have this whole career. You have a church in Florida. Why don't you talk about what you've created? Then we'll go back to some of the topics of the spiritual world that you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis with our clientele, like out of body and near death and all that. But talk about your church, your congregation you created.
Yeah, I got great people. When you're on this journey, other people are attracted to it, and when you're speaking truth, people know it. Our own internal BS-ometer says, "Hey."
That's a cute one. I haven't heard that one. You must have made that up yourself.
So there's been a great group of folks that are just like, hey, we're showing up and we're doing stuff, and then we just continued doing that. I was guest ministering at a lot of different local spiritualist churches, unity churches, Science of Mind, all those things. And people kept saying, Scott, when are you going to have your own church? And I said, well, let's see. When somebody shows up at my house, 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I'll know it's time to make one.
And they did.
And that's a safe bet because you're always speaking at a different church, so you're never home to know if anybody shows up. Well, one Sunday, my wife and I were both sick, so we stayed home from church. 10 o'clock in the morning, some guy we had never met before in our life knocked on my door. I said, can I help you? And he said, yeah, I'm here for church. And I said, well, shoot, come back next week and we'll make one. And he did, and other people followed, and we started room, and I think at our peak we grew at about a 9,000 square foot facility and was just rocking it out. And then different things happen. It shrunk back down, grows back up. But it's people are brought in, they're connected to.
I love that, Scott, because you're doing the work of God. You're doing spiritual work, and it doesn't really have a religion attached at all. And that's what's beautiful about it. With me, I don't use religion because religion's man-made, and what you and I do is spiritual, which is not part of the religious dogma. You may have a religious connotation, I don't really know, but as far as the spiritual aspects, we cover and help people from universal energy, and if you want to call it God or whatever you want to call it, fine, but the thing is, you're that magnet. You became that magnet to help others when you walked in at age 5. I was 27 when it happened to me. So my first 27 years is like a whole nother life. I remember things vaguely, but I don't have the attachment to it that I once did. And everything has become more attached in light, spirit, near death, out of body, helping people. I've been on radio for 30 years. I just got asked to do a TV show. Who knows where it's going? The book's coming out. It's a whole different journey than I envisioned. And I think it's the same for you. It's sort of like keeps growing. You plant a seed, doors open. Oh, well, let's do this because you're entrepreneurial on top of it. You always have another idea, but you're always helping somebody. What about, let's talk about near-death experiences, because I've had 3, the plane crash, the fire truck, and then totaling a car with the white light, and I had the choice to live or die, and I stayed. And when the paramedics came to get me out of my car in 1984, I said, they want me off the planet, because I didn't understand all that back then. But to people who come to you or to me that have had an NDE, it's become more common to talk about now than it was 30, 40 years ago when it was, 1, no internet, and 2, it was just starting to become a topic that people weren't so afraid to open up because it was so taboo, right? So when people come to you with a near-death experience, can you tell if they actually had an NDE versus a fearful situation? Can you see the split or change in their personality? Do you know how to identify it to help them?
Well, in 2018, my wife and I were painting a building. She was three stories up on the top of this ladder, and a freak gust of wind blew it out from underneath her. She fell 30, 35 feet straight down, and I caught her. And when I did, it knocked the wind out of both of us, flopping around on the ground in pain, trying to breathe. And she finally caught her breath, and I couldn't. And so I just kept remembering, if I could just stand up, I think I can breathe. And so when I tried to stand up, from about here up, fell off. And then I was in shock, and I was like, wow, I'm in shock. I can breathe. I don't hurt. This is amazing. This golden light and this music in the trees and all this amazing stuff. And I could hear some spirit family over my shoulder, and then I could hear my wife crying. And I was like, honey, don't cry. It's okay. I'm just in shock. And I turned
She
around.
thought you were dead.
And there's my wife, and she's crying, and there's my body, and I'm not in it. And in this kind of prayer position up to about the breastbone, and then that was flipped over like a Pez dispenser with my head with eggs. And I went, oh, that's not good. And so anyway, long story short, I was physically dead 3 times that day, and rushed me to the hospital. And it turned out when I caught her, the impact exploded my T6 vertebrae. And so it fell off. The top half of my body fell off because the spine, that chunk of bone, just wasn't there to support it. So it popped over. Then in the hospital, trauma center and all these things, they're talking to me about reconstructive surgery and what they're going to have to do, and how the bone became a million little bones, spinal cord. And if it touches it, I'm paralyzed for life and all these things. And I said, well, I think I'd like a second opinion. And they said, Scott, we're the trauma center. We are the second opinion. And I said, well, that's cool. I want to talk to the guy who made the doctor, and got into a prayer.
They didn't know who they were talking to or what you meant. Go on. This is great.
So then the very condensed version of a long story is the accident happened Friday at noon, February 2nd, 2018. By Monday at 7, my spine had regrown itself, and I was released, and I was back home writing a thank you note to all the Reiki masters, healers, shaman, medicine men, sheiks, everybody who was praying, sending good energy, that my spine had regrown itself in 3 days.
And the doctors couldn't figure it out.
I was back home, no surgery, no physical therapy, no anything like that. And so that all went well.
Obviously.
Right? And
so here we are 5 years later, and you just keep going.
So, yeah, when people talk about near-death experiences, a lot of times they're drawn to it because we have it. So they know that, like, dude, you've done it, so I know that
the experience and what goes on. Yeah, I've had the white light, which I didn't understand. The plane crash was the out-of-body experience and the walk-in. Then I had emergency surgery in 1991. No. Well, that's when I became a healer. Let's go back. 81 was the plane crash. 82, I got hit by a fire truck, which prevented me from getting to UCLA for a job in epidemiology that I was trying to get. And it prevented me from that. But I dislocated my shoulder, and I ended up having ulnar release surgery 20 some odd years later from all the pain as a result of that accident. Because when you're holding on and a truck hits you and you watch, your body goes into shock. So I went through that. And then 2 years later, I totaled a car on a rainy night in West LA. And as I was spitting out, I said, oh, I just want to go home. I was tired. So the white light, literally, you'll probably get chills, went from my head to the ceiling of my car into the heavens. And this loud voice said, you can come with us now or stay and do. And I was given a message. And paramedics were there next with the jaws of life. And I said, they want me off the planet, because I didn't know why I was being indoctrinated back then, but I didn't know. They were throwing me through weird things like you, but I got big events like a plane crash. You just fell several feet. You just had your spine go back in order. No, just little things, right? With me, it was all psychic and metaphysical and spiritual and woo-woo. Let's go back to the woo-woo. But you've got so much to be grateful for. That's a whole nother book right there, Scott, just talking about your near death, which I know is in your book. What we're talking about, there's so many different topics here, but we are talking about the spirituality, and that's the whole spiritual world, which is walk-ins, near death, out of body, mediumship. Mediumship is talking to a spirit from the other side that's deceased. And I have the gift, and Scott has the gift, where you tune in and you get communication. It gives somebody comfort and closure. And the same thing with animals. We can do that with animals, and it goes on and on and on. But when you do talk to animals, for example, do you see the dog or cat or fish or horse? Do you see them, or do you get their energy and communicate their thoughts? How do you do animals?
Depends on the animal. Each one.
Okay, so all right, let me test you. My dog Penny, I put her down a year ago. I know she's around me all the time. I don't know what you need. There's words, or maybe you have an animal you want to bring in yourself, and to explain to the audience that don't understand, because they think we're weird. A lot of people think we make this stuff up. One time I was accused of Googling a woman's daughter that commits suicide at the beach, And because it was some news in Texas, she thought I read about it. I said, I didn't read about it. It's my work.
Well,
Same thing with
there
you.
was a time, not to switch subjects from you on this, but to go into what you're talking about. There was a time a family contacted me several states away from where I lived, and their mom had been missing, and they said, we want to fly you here. We want you to help find her. And I did. I showed up at the airport, all these carloads of people and a police and whatever. And I'm just like, okay, we're trying to find mom, so I'm jumping in a rental car and asked mom to sit in the passenger seat. So I started off with a little pendulum of which way do we go? And then finally could kind of see mom, turn left, turn right, these things. And long story short, she'd been missing for a while. I'd consulted the family. I let them know she had crossed. They were looking for closure and ended up driving to where her body was, where her remains were.
Oh my God, I just got chills. That's when you're telling the truth. People, when you get chills, little goosebumps, that's when somebody like Scott or me is telling the truth and spirit's confirming. Go on.
So from the time I landed to the time we were at her physical remains was under probably an hour and a half, something. And the officer that was with us looked at me and he said, Scott, if the family had not called you, I would arrest you right now because you know things only the killer would know. And the number of times that I've heard that from law enforcement is unsettling every single time.
I worked with a detective once. They couldn't figure out how I knew about the murder in the woods. And I've been asked to do it. I don't want to do it. Do you work with the cops now or do you just do it when a family needs you?
On occasion, there's a few investigators on the FBI or local law enforcement that call me if they're stuck or they need something. I tend to work more like what I attract in are areas where I can make a big difference. And there's a huge difference of getting some closure for someone. But by the same token, like if somebody has a missing child and we can tune into where the missing child is and reunite it with its family, I'm much more excited about doing that because again, it's all important. But in the work that we do, you also, because we're not just psychic or just medium or just this or just that, there's so many different applications that every day is different, which is great. But also every day is different, which is, oh boy, there's something new.
And it's overwhelming sometimes. And you still have to pay bills and you still have to do the administrative stuff and you still have to show up. And it's not just that we're psychic all the time, it's there, but you got to learn how to balance in the physical world as well. And a lot of people don't understand this. Like, no, drop everything. Give me a reading now. I said, no, I'm 3 weeks booked. You got to wait. No, I need it now. I said, you can't have it now. Or there's times if it's really important or severe, of course I make the time, but I can't just drop everything for that one person at that moment. But you do a lot of great work and you always do. And I remember you telling me the story about the woman that you helped. But let's go back to more of the psychic. To define, we're not going to bring in my dog Penny, that's okay. But if you do, I was just a sample. The psychic world that a lot of people don't understand includes clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient abilities. Clairvoyant is when you see, clairaudience when you hear a spirit or a message, and then the clairsentient is when you feel. Do you use all the different aspects in your work? Like you just sort of like open it where it is?
All of it, empath. All these different things, because again, the way the other side communicates is different with each person. It's going to make the most impact for the person I'm working with. So, if Grandpa smoked a pipe, and that's how you remember Grandpa, then I'm probably going to smell the pipe.
You smell the tobacco. I get that, or the perfume, or the cologne. One time, I had a woman say, "I want to talk to my husband," and I swear all I could get is, I don't know. He was some MD here in Pasadena. And I said, I just see a guy in a white coat staring out the window chewing gum. That's all I could say. She goes, well, that's my husband. That's all. He wouldn't talk. He would just stare chewing gum. Others, I would bring in hours of information, and it's documenting. It's in my book. You'll read it when I'm going to have you, testify in my book. But everybody is different, yes. And sometimes if you're like me, maybe you can share these experiences. I retired professionally from channeling in 2018. I still will in certain situations, but after 22 years, it took a toll on my body and my mind. I wouldn't sleep, and then I'd say to my client, I'm really tired. Oh, my husband died of sleep apnea. Or one time I was puking, and it turned out the woman had stomach cancer. So I would pick up their symptoms. Do you do that too? Do you get the symptom of the deceased before you bring them in?
Well, I feel to an extent whatever it was they felt or they want me to feel.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of things in my practice so that I don't bring it fully into my body. And partially because I'm a I'm a walk-in, and so and again, I know you are too, but because I know what it's like I'm real careful of what comes in here.
We have to. That's a great point, Scott, because we absorb more than the average. Everybody's sensitive, everybody's creative, everybody's intelligent. Well, not everybody, but there's there's different levels of being, but we are on this higher, different frequency than the average. Whether it's light, noise at the mall, I go crazy at the mall if it's too much of a vibration, and I got to get away from some of what I call lower ethereals because the energy is so draining. But people like you and me, we're like magnets. We just suck in the energy, boom, there's your answer. What do you do to protect yourself? Do you shield? Do you meditate? Do you light candles? Do you just hear and then you know what to do to protect what's going to happen? Because sometimes I'm thrown for a loop and I still get so either depressed or lethargic, or I can't move for hours till the soul leaves me because it grabbed on. What do you do?
Well, I use a lot of things.
Do you get that?
Prayer, meditation, all those things.
Yeah.
Like stones and crystals. So hematite is my friend, especially on the giving and receiving arms of things. And then some of it's just knowing your limits. When I was a young guy, my friends used to say, Scott, come to the bar with me because you can tell me who's single, who's whatever. And, so at the beginning, you're a kid, you're like, yeah, let's do it. And, inside about 20 minutes, I'm like, people think too loud in here, dude. I got to go.
I could tell who's sleeping with who, or who didn't like their meal, or who's bored on their date. Yeah, because I can look, and there's a friend of mine used to talk. I remember when you said at such and such a restaurant, and you pegged everybody. Yeah, we have that ability, but that's not what it's for, even though it can get overwhelming.
And with that is just learning to limit my exposure to things that are pushing on my bubble that are okay. There's my window. Yeah. And then other times you just call in the help you need to strengthen what you have in order to do the work that needs to be done. When I go to do work on a client inside of a prison or inside of a trauma center or something like that you can't control the energy that's there. It is what it is. You need to work within it. So just put on your armor and go to work.
What's the name of your book that we're discussing all these different chapters?
It is Spiritual Gifts, A Glimpse Behind the Veil.
And if people want to get a copy of it, even though it's not hardbound yet, how can they reach you and get a copy of it?
Well, I'll tell you.
Tell us.
It's kind of cool because you were one of the few people that I sent a pre-release copy of the book to.
And I'm grateful and honored. Thank you.
And you were nice enough to read it and to have nice things to say and all that stuff. And this is actually the first and only so far interview that I've actually done in the book because it is.
Oh, wow. Well, you can use this. We'll just set it out, the funny part, if you want. Oh, so, good. Well, use it.
Your listeners that want a copy, send me an email at scott@connectwithscott.com, and I'll email you the PDF pre-release version, and you can read it for free. Enjoy. I've got a book club that's starting with Zoom, where people who have questions about it, we're getting on and talking about each one of these things as they go. And,
and on Tuesdays you have that, so every chapter has a date, because if they want to know more about the healing, or they want to know more about the animal communication or the NDEs, the near-death experiences, you're doing topics now, which is wonderful, like I do on this show. Now you're bringing your audience together. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. As far as healing, when I do a healing, I have people laying down, and I have a technique that was given to me in 1991 after emergency surgery that I had. And I opened up as a healer using breathing, color, and words. And it's a 40-minute process. And usually after a 7-day wait period, people transform and a lot of the negativity is gone. What do you do to heal people?
Oh, gosh, I just tune in and I see stuff. And then whatever there is to move around or do or tell or whatever it is, we do it.
Are you more like the medical intuitive? You can see the tumors, or you can see the grief, or you can see the whatever you find, or are you more medical? Are you more spiritual, emotional? Because I tie in all as well. But how do you do it with your X-ray eyes?
All the above. To me, it's just all about the result. There was there was a lady, she contacted me. I was on a book tour on one of my last books. And she said, I see you're in town XYZ and you're next going to town ABC. I live right between the two. She said, we wanted to come see you so bad, but we couldn't. My daughter wants to see you. She's having a bad day. Is there any way you could stop by? And I said, sure. Well, I tuned in real quick and was told by my guides, like, yeah, you need to go and you stop on the way. So I told her. So I showed up and here's this lady just excited to, a 10 out of 10. And takes me to meet her daughter, and she's paraplegic from the neck down. Wow. And she was hitting a car accident, drunk driver, when she was like early teen, and now by this time she was like 16, 17. And I said, oh my goodness, I'm here to help. What can I do? And so I just looked at her, and I'm starting to see colors and move my hands and put colors different places and connect things. And, I'm just connecting the dots and doing cool stuff. And we get done. And, I'm sitting on one corner of the bed, and the parents came in, they're sitting on the other corner of the bed. And I said, what do you feel, honey? And she said, I feel better, Dad. And I go, well, that's great, honey. That's all we could have hoped for. And a little bit later, probably 20 minutes later, she starts doing this. And we all look.
Oh my God.
About 20 minutes later, she's doing this. About 20 minutes later, and it walked its way around her body. And inside of a couple hours,
she was standing up.
Put one arm over me and one arm over Dad and walked across the room. And
oh my God.
So she had to go into physical therapy in a swimming pool, and her mom would send me letters, oh, look, she can do X, Y, and Z in a swimming pool. And, it wasn't all instantaneous. Like there was
it's a process, but you got her unstuck. You healed her from being a paraplegic, neurologically, muscularly, everything that was down, especially with the nerves, because it's the nervous system. You fixed her. You healed her. That's the miracle of God. That's a gift beyond words, beyond the veil. That's special.
Yeah.
You should be grateful for what you do.
Be part of. And, so to me, whether it's I'm seeing colors, I'm seeing the, whether it's, chakras and meridians, or whether it's trauma, whether it's past life, whether it's present life, whether it's physiological, I'll see a tumor, I'll see a physiological problem. Sometimes I see things metaphorically, whatever it is, but however it is that's going to get the result that we need is what I'm there going after. And so where it comes in.
That's how you communicate it. Yeah. It just sort of happens. I think that's brilliant. I love those kind of stories. I had a woman in a similar situation who had polio, and I think it was the right hip. Something with the hip never worked right, and she still rode horses, but she was never comfortable. But I did a healing on her, and her hip healed. And I have the letter somewhere from a long time ago. And I had another girl that had 26 split personalities, MPD, and I put her back into one. And her mother flew in from Arizona to thank me. We have an energy, Scott, that the average person really can't access, because if everybody had the gift and everybody had this frequency, people like us wouldn't be needed to help, because everybody'd be okay. But it doesn't work that way. Certain people have certain gifts. Your gift continues to help heal people out there. Mine heals. I communicate. We all have a different way of getting the message out there, but you've got major testimonies that alone should be another book, just of those stories. I know you touch upon it in the book, but you can do even more descriptive chapters just on all those that you've really touched. I don't know if you're like me, but there's a humbleness about it where people go, thank you, I can't thank you enough, and this and that. And we're like, okay, you're welcome. And I don't take it to the extreme. At the beginning, I think maybe 30 years ago, I was in awe, like I did that. Now it's like, oh, thank you. It's just a part of me. I don't even know how I do it. I just do. I don't know. Sometimes I don't even remember. Do you forget? That you just sort of like go on automatic, you get things done, and then they say, oh, thank you. And I can remember, who is it? What did I do? I can't remember everything.
Yeah. Well, first, when I'm doing sessions, I tell people there's no record button on a telephone. My job is to let the messages come through. It's not to record it. So yeah, I don't have a conscious recall of a whole lot of things that go on during the session, unless afterwards the person's telling me, or things come up or whatever. Some of the things that are just shock and awe, of course, those stick in my head because wow, who knew? But Yeah, with the humbleness part, to me, I look at, look at when I'm doing a healing, I feel like I'm a jumper cable, and if my battery's dead and you come over with your car and hook up the jumper cables and you jump my car and I'm fixed and I can go down the road, I thank you. I don't look at the jumper cable and go, wow, you did an amazing job. Go jumper cable, go. So I see myself as the jumper cable. I'm just connecting energy from A to B. I'm doing my job. That's what I was here to do. But there's no ego about that. There's gratitude for both batteries that I'm connecting there, so to speak, and do whatever I can to be the best darn jumper cable I can.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is what it is.
So at the end of the day, what does Scott do to unplug the cable, decompress the energy, get back to dad, husband, man, and watch TV or take a walk or go swimming? How do you just sort of like detach? How do you unplug that? We're connected like a cable. I always called it like the bumper cars at the pier, and I'm being moved around by this cable called God, and I'm just there. It's the same. We use a lot of the same terminology because I don't know how else to describe it, but what do you do to like disconnect so that you're back in your body and you're not working, collecting, and hearing and seeing, but just enjoying some life?
Well, we've got 6 kids, so they keep you popping. Everybody's pulling you in a different direction to do something. Then with a spiritual family, congregation, family, friends. Here in Florida where we live, the backyard, you can see my little meditation spot, my koi pond over there, and a swimming pool, and my big old tall, 12-foot tall farm in the background. And there's just always stuff that's going on and things that can be done that when you're just enjoying this whole incarnation thing, because nobody.
It's a part of you. It's your passion. You live your passion.
Yeah, but it's different than like when I used to work in the corporate world. My job was growing company CEO, and so I used all these metaphysical gifts for business. And because again, I was told it was my imagination, like, cool, I was born a poor kid on the wrong side of the tracks with tons of abuse and adoption. Let's go. The brochure says that if you're making some money and you're living the life, so you
You're
mentioned
supposed to be happy.
I went to high school in Redondo Beach. I used to live in Palos Verdes, there in the South Bay of Los Angeles,
Right.
and that's where I grew companies. And so I'd take these little companies that made, the first one I think made 450,000 a year before I took it over, and I was about 20, and I grew it up to 28 million a year inside of a few years. Exited, went with a different company. It was a little bitty thing, and made 30 grand, and got distribution all 50 states and 26 countries and blah blah blah. Anyway, the same techniques, the same practices that are there for the spiritual realm or physical or emotional are also there for our financial. And so I used all this stuff to grow companies, and then since have consulted businesses with let me help you grow. How do we do? And was honored to have the United States Congress invite me to the Small Business Advisory Council, named me chairman for the state that I was in. Congress gave me a leadership award, which was really odd for a psychic, but I was like, yeah.
If only they knew, right?
They did. What they did it for was some work I had done with the FBI and finding some kids and doing some stuff. And, so it's not just the standard things that, Miss Cleo with the bowl of fruit on the head with, here's my.
Those all right. Let's go to the charlatans for a moment. It's the charlatans out there that make fun of the real psychics. And it's been the hardest part to stay on radio for me as the challenge to prove them wrong, and that there are real gifted people like you and me that know how to do the work. TikTok didn't exist back then. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. When you and I were coming up, the digital world wasn't there. Now everybody's a psychic, everybody's a healer, everybody's doing crystals. It's saturated. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And then a lot of people bounce around, or like, I do candle magic. They say, well, I try to be else's candles, but yours really work. I said, yeah, I'm a real psychic. How do you tell people who come to you, who think they've met them all and they know better, then all of a sudden they find the real thing in you to say, well, I am the real deal, as opposed to all the wannabes, could be's, might be's who are hurting people? People are messing with people's lives, giving them false hope, thinking they're going to change or whatever. There's a lot of negativity out there in the quote field because of the charlatans. How do you help people see that difference so that they don't get caught up in that wheel of the fakes?
Well, we all help the best we can. The first is a lot of prayer, and then the information that we put out there to folks about their own BSometer, about their own,
BSometer. I got a few people in the chat just love that. You
you
created
know,
something new. BSometer.
asking for guidance, and then following when it comes through. I had a lady come, and she had a session scheduled with a psychic, quote unquote, and all the questions that she asked the lady, where do you get your info? How do you do this? How do you do that? All the answers were setting off alarm bells in the lady. And, spirit worked it to where she missed 3 appointments. And, you would think at some point here, you're going to get it and not go there. But she forced it and she went through, and, lady talked to her about some stuff. Anyway, just wrecked her life. And so a year later, whatever, I was connected with her. And she came in for a reading, and she was looking for career advice. And I tuned in, and I said, well, you think you're here for career advice, but your guys want to talk to you about your husband. The lady you went to go see, here's all the ways they told you not to go see her: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And they're saying that she confirmed that he was having an affair by the piece of jewelry that was in an underwear drawer. And they're telling me that diamond tennis bracelet was for your birthday, girl. You just convicted the wrong man. And you really need, and she said, you can't know that. You can't know. I said, well,
yeah, but you do know that. Yeah.
You don't need to, but I'm telling you what I got. And she stormed out of my office, and on her cell phone, I see her walking up and down the street. And, 20 minutes later, she came in and she said,
you were right.
I was given bad info. Like, I called my ex-husband. I said, if you didn't do these things, why did you leave? And he said, because before that, I believed that we were in a marriage, we could talk anything out, and that you would ask for my opinion. And believe me, you went to go see some psychic, and you came back judge, jury, executioner. And I didn't want to be in a relationship like that. So if you wanted out, I had to let you go. Long story short, they were remarried about 3 months later. I've been very happy ever since.
Good. They got out. They got the truth. They got the truth.
Or who she's getting advice from. But I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter if you're going to hire a lawyer or a banker, a financial advisor.
It's in your heart still. If you want to stay in a crappy relationship and work it through, fine. I am only a light. I am only suggestion. I don't do black and white. People ask, is this it? I can tell when they're in the wrong relationship or if they're going down the wrong path. But sometimes you got to trip and fall on your own to figure it out. My job and your job is kind of like a flashlight on the path to say, well, there's a boulder. Take a little step to the left. You don't have to go through that. We can show them.
And again, just like anybody who's going to hire any professional, is just research them a little bit.
Yeah, find out their background or their testimonials and their ratings, their authenticity.
Right. I'm going to hire a financial advisor because I heard him on YouTube. A place to start, but I'm going to do some due diligence before I trust him with something important to me. And so the same thing when it comes to a reading, a healing.
Yeah, you're right.
Do a little due diligence. Somebody's worked with them before, what they have to say. And, pray on it. Feel your intuition. See where you're at.
I had a girl the other day. You'll love this one, Scott. She said, I got 2 guys. I said, well, neither one are right for you. She goes, well, how do you know? I said, I'm a psychic. I said, why are you coming to me? She goes, yeah, but I said, you do what you want with them, but neither one are going to marry you. You're sleeping with both of them. Well, how do you know that? I hung up. I don't want to deal with the idiosyncrasies of people that don't want to hear what the truth might be. She'll go to 15 other readers and say, oh, yeah, this one loves you. I mean, she's 22 years old, and she thinks this is it, and she's got 2 guys. And no, I want to get I'm sorry.
I said, the funny thing is, like you talked about unscrupulous psychics, sometimes there's unscrupulous clients.
More so, yes, that's true.
And a young gal with her mother-in-law, and she said, I'm here so that you can tell me about the affair that my husband's having. And, this is his mom, and da-da-da. She needs to hear of XYZ. And, at this particular event, there were some really good psychics, and there were some cold reading, you're going to pay me a fee, and I'm going to tell you whatever you want to hear psychics. And she picked the wrong one.
Because you don't tell the truth. Yep.
Said, well, honey, I said, well, we could talk about that if he was having one, and he's not. But we need to talk about his best friend, Jeff, and how you're holding his baby right now. And she went, what? I said, honey.
Oh, she's the one having the affair, and she got pregnant. Oh, you blew the whistle on that one, Scott.
Want somebody who's going to tell you what you want to hear, go 2 booths down, and they'll hook you right up. But, It's insulting the spirit when you're trying to use someone like me in front of the kid's mom to convict him for something that you're doing and he is not. And she went, I'm not paying. I said, I don't expect you to, but you probably need to vacate your seat. I probably need a little sage.
Wow. God, we could go on forever and ever and ever. I need to wrap this up. Scott, I want to bring you back when I start the new network. Probably next month we'll do another round and get into more of the chapters, because there's so much. A whole show can be done on Akashic Records. A whole show can be done on OBE, out-of-body experiences, and astral projection and astral travel and client testimony, which is all over the website for you and for me, and how we work and how we walked in, and all these wonderful terms that the average person thinks is woo-woo wacko. But then there's people like us that kind of dispel the woo-woo wacko because it's real. That's why I went back and got a PhD after I got an MPH in epidemiology. I went real science, real woo-woo, put them together. You just sort of grew up as it. I had to merge it. Everybody gets here if it's meant. The spirit's what's driving both of us. I love it. You can see it in your eyes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. This is a hoot.
Anytime, Scott. You're fun to talk to. We will do it again. Give out your email address one more time so people can email you to get a copy of the PDF file on the book, Spiritual Gifts, A Glimpse Beyond the Veil, that was written by Scott Gabriel. And you'll get all these topics right there in your email. What is the email?
Scott, SCOTT, at connectwithscott.com.
And if people have a problem, they can go to lindasalvin.com and get it from me. People, that's the end of the show today. Scott, hang out backstage for a few minutes, and then we will finish up talking. People, don't forget there's Wicks of Wisdom. Everything's on sale. 15% off if you go to lindasalvin.com. Email me, and I'll give you 15% off if you mention the Scott Show. And we'll be back with more probably next week. You have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon, everybody. Thanks for listening and being here. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed today's program with Dr. Linda. Need a breakthrough of your own? Ready for answers or insights nobody else has? Reserve your own one-on-one in-person chat. Dr. Linda isn't just for other people. Dr. Linda gets results for you. And it's easy. Contact details are on screen now. Just click on lindasalvin.com or call toll-free 888-509-1077. That's lindasalvin.com or toll-free at 888-509-1077.